Well, like I said, we're already paying for Donald Trump's tariff war, and it has barely got started. The Australian dollar today fell even lower to under 61 cents. I hope you weren't planning going overseas. It's now lost nearly 9% of its value against the US dollar since Trump was elected. The stock market was also hammered, losing $50 billion. Joining me is economist and former Productivity Commissioner Judith Sloan, now a columnist with The Australian. Judith, great to see you. How could Trump's tariff war hurt us, especially, with the 10% is put on China's exports to the US, which is going to clobber its economy?
Well, hello, Andrew. Yes, well, that is the point. I suppose it's good news to mention the fact that Australia actually doesn't run a deficit with the US. We actually have quite small trade flows between Australia and America. We have quite big capital flows, but quite small trade flows. I think there's meat, there's some other agricultural, wine, there's some forms of steel, but it's small beer. But the real danger for us is that dog leg via China. So if they impose, and bear in mind, the 10% tariff that Trump has announced is in addition to the tariffs that were already imposed by him that were kept by Biden, interestingly. And so if that leads to a weakening in the Chinese economy, that will flow back into some of our important commodities, including iron ore and coal in particular.
What does this mean for the possibility of interest rate cuts? I've heard from people saying, well, look, now that this has happened, that's now less likely to happen soon.
Well, it's very hard to tell. So, the argument is that the tariffs will be inflationary, probably only slightly inflationary. The fact that it's driven up the value of the US dollar is actually kind of offsetting the effect of the tariff, by the way. But I think everyone's reading tea leaves at the moment, including, what Trump finally intends to do. But the Fed Chairman, Jerome Powell, recently held the cash rate there, and some people were interpreting that as waiting and see what was going to happen with Trump and the tariffs.
Now, we've been told, Judith, this is just turning everything we've been told for years and years, decades, when I was at school. Tariffs are bad, free trade is good. The world benefits from free trade. Now we have Trump saying the opposite. Not that the world benefits, but the US gets clobbered. But could he actually be onto something, that tariffs could make the US more self-sufficient when we've only just seen, particularly with the pandemic, with the war in Ukraine, how dangerous it is to rely on the rest of the world to supply our necessities?
Well, look, I think that's a valid point, but I think tariffs would be a very bad way of doing that. If you want to, for example, have a factory that produces insulin, you should subsidise that factory and prevent it exporting it, and you probably should prevent the Chinese owning it. So those are all pretty draconian things to do, but I think tariffs would actually impose greater costs and uncertain benefits. But look, I think, and Andrew, you might want to sort of investigate this in the coming weeks. He has a point that the advocates of the global trading system rather ignore the obvious weaknesses, the cheating, the deception that goes on. So China is a member of the World Trade Organization. We had a free trade agreement with them, but that didn't prevent them putting the tariffs up on barley, on wine, on lobsters. So there's a lot of sort of cheating and ducking and weaving that goes on. So we're not comparing the Trump tariff idea with some sort of nirvana of fair and free trade. So I think that there's quite a lot of water to go under the bridge of this debate.
Yeah, and that's not even including the way that China massively subsidises some of the industries that are creating havoc in the West, like its electrical vehicle industry. Judith Sloan, thank you so much indeed for your time.